Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 67. I am your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we are excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed filmmaker, Asif Akbar. Asif, that's true. You are internationally acclaimed. That's not, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Barney. It's still kind of weird to hear that sometimes.
Right.
I look at myself as a filmmaker, and then when you hear international, it's like, wow, I guess that's pretty important. Maybe it sounds important.
Yeah, because I mean,
thank you.
You're welcome. Because I was listening to some of your previous interviews. You said that you have some things that that you can't really chat about yet because they're in pre-production, but some of those are on hold based off of COVID restrictions in different countries as well that are going to be planning
and
on.
they are international projects. You're right, and like the big one is MR9, which is an adaptation of an international top-selling a book series. It's based on the Masood Rana novel series out of Bangladesh that's been publishing since 1966, and still today they're publishing books. They have over 500 books in the series. It's kind of like Asian James Bond series. So that's something I'm very excited about, and we were in development and pre-pro right before the pandemic started to go into production last year, but because of the pandemic and it being a multinational film, we're shooting in 3 different countries, so it became impossible for even try to shoot last year. So we're finally getting ready to get into production with that very soon, now that some of the international rules and regulations have loosened up a bit.
Starting to loosen up a bit.
So yeah, and so that's a big exciting project for me that I'm very much looking forward to. But we got creative, and I kept making movies during the pandemic. Some other ones that just kind of fell in my lap.
Right. Yeah. Let's chat about that. So, but for our viewers and audience, or for our viewers and listeners at home, who might not be familiar with your expansive resume, do you want to kind of first give people a little bit of background to how you got into filmmaking, and then we can start chatting about how some of the different roles are that you've taken on as the producer and writer and director, and some advice for people who are listening that might be writers or filmmakers as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Absolutely. It's just something that I've always wanted to do is tell stories, and as I grew older from my childhood, I grew with this dream and goal of becoming a filmmaker. So I was always learning. I kind of figured out from an early age that being a filmmaker is about consuming your experiences and your environment, and just learning from everything and trying to create a story and tell your story whichever way you may want to present it. When I first started, my version of filmmaking was when I was, as far as I can remember, when I was 4 or 5 years old. I used to play video game, Super Nintendo, and I would record myself playing the video game, like with the VCR, VHS tapes. I took the concept of being able to record what's playing on TV and doing tape-to-tape VCR editing to now recording my games that I'm playing that are being projected on TV, and I'm recording them on VHS. And now I'm sharing these with people, thinking, look, that's something I'm controlling, this avatar. I'm telling a story, and now I have it on VHS like my other movies. So to me, that was like the concept of filmmaking. And as I grew older with, developing and maturing my ideas, I started learning more and more about, all the different elements of filmmaking. And so to me, I was always making films. So even when I was a little kid, playing games with friends was like making movies. Then I went into taking it a step further into my education, and I started as an actor. So I was doing a lot of plays and theater groups, and went into drama club, obviously. And then in high school, I had the opportunity to really get into production and learn the behind the scenes stuff with a radio and television program that was in my high school. And we were creating different productions for the local cable network. So that gave me a lot more professional experience at an earlier age, even before college, to the point where I knew all the basics of the technical sides of it. So then when I went into college, for me, it was just like, having access to a studio with editing facilities and cameras and equipments, and then a whole peer group of people that I could collaborate with. So for me, it was like going to work and just making productions and kind of intertwining both worlds, my professional working world along with my education, into just kind of making it a natural part of my life. That was just another part of my life from the beginning to even now. It's what I know and what I do, and even in education, when I went to film school, I was learning and taking all kinds of different classes. Film school isn't just about making films, it's all the elements that combine into you being a storyteller and a filmmaker. I had psychology classes, I had math classes, even algebra and geometry, where people, think, why am I going to use this in life, or why am I learning this? And it's interesting. Every little thing you learn along the way, you can utilize as tools. And I've learned that. And so, for me, it's about being a student every day in your everyday life, learning and utilizing those tools that you gather to becoming a bigger and better, more mature filmmaker. So I feel like I'm just getting started.
And you said, and you mentioned in a previous interview where you finished up your post production of your latest film, Commando, which
Right.
which I can pull it up here on the screen so people can see it on their IMDb. And this was something that you filmed during COVID. It was starring Mickey Rourke and Michael J. White. So I guess my question for you, based off of the COVID restrictions that you said in a previous interview, you had to shorten that time. Do you see, as a filmmaker, any logistic implementations that you got during COVID that you think you'll be using more in your that make that filmmaking more streamlined that you want to use in the future?
Yes, I think we definitely had to adapt many new rules and regulations, and a new formula of how we can streamline some of these productions. And I personally think some of it is good to have in place moving forward, even with or without COVID. Just being safer and cleaner on set, to where it's protecting the safety of everyone. And to be honest, there have been productions in the past where I myself have been sick on set, from a cold or whatever. When you're shooting for long periods of times with a lot of people, someone's bound to get sick. But during the COVID times, we had COVID officers who were constantly checking temperatures and making sure people are not sick. And if one person even had a false positive, we would get shut down. So just being clean and safe and looking out for one another and being more precautious, that alone, should have been a standard protocol. It keeps everyone a lot safer. So that's something definitely moving forward, I think, would be a positive factor to
Mm.
have.
And how would you describe? Because you've mentioned earlier before that you see film as the most collaborative art form. And do you
Mhm.
see, because of that, how much information, especially when you write the script, you write the script and you produce it and you direct it, how much influence does does the rest of the filming crew and the actors have in tweaking and changing some of the thing in process?
Um, It depends. Sometimes some actors will only worry about their characters and not the overall story. And me as the director, I have to keep in mind of all factors. Every single person's work, and what they're thinking, their vision, and then bringing it together into this big puzzle as puzzle pieces to make it work and create this final picture and tell the story. So a lot of times, I have to pick and choose of what ideas we can move forward with very carefully, because just like any other puzzle, if one piece is off, then you don't have the complete picture. So it's very important that everybody is on the same page, and working towards the same vision. Yes, now along the ways, it's our job to solve problems. You always have issues come up where maybe you don't have time to get a certain prop that you wanted, or you don't have time to finish construction on the set exactly the way you want it to, or some actor, something happened and now you have to change things around. So you always have to be ready for plan A, B, and C to be implemented in when necessary. Just have to kind of go with the flow and make things work with what you have to work with. So as long as everybody has at least the same mindset and attitude of working together on being able to collaborate to solve problems and move forward, without it hampering, the work and the full show, then I think, it's a lot easier to collaborate with those like-minded people. And, and there's more of us than few. Whenever we find those like-minded individuals, it's a lot easier for all of us. And so you'll see, I work with a lot of the same people I've worked with in the past, and even a lot of the new. We connect and click right away from day one to be able to know, okay, we can work together in that collaborative form. And then there's sometimes some people that we come across that we haven't worked with before, and maybe it doesn't work out. So, we don't move forward. Or sometimes, from day one you connect, and it becomes the perfect team. So I'm always open to working with new people, as long as we can connect on the same mindset of getting the job done.
And so, how often do you see it happen where you see an actor or some of the things say, "Hey, can you change? I don't think that my character would say this." How much editing? Because you did also mention, in a previous interview too, that like you prefer what is natural than being strictly sticking to the script. Um, how much rewrites or how much do you change the script while the film is being made?
Um, yeah, a lot of times it depends on the actors also,
Okay.
and part of my belief of working with actors is that you know they're artists and creative talents in their own rights to be able to deliver their vision as well, as long as it helps tell the story and sticks with character. A lot of actors like Mickey Rourke, for example, I had a pleasure of working with him on the last film, and he's a true actor. He can improvise as long as he has the story and character in his head. He will deliver you dialogue that only Mickey Rourke can deliver. That's why he's Mickey Rourke. And same thing, with other talented actors. They'll come up with an idea. Sometimes, we do it just like it's written on script one way, and then I'll tell them, you know what, now next take, even if the first take is great, let's just go for a safety and try your way, and have an alternative. So now we have both versions to look at in editing, and maybe in editing the one works better than the other, but at least we have a choice. And some actors are open to that, and some actors, uh, sometimes they can't think outside of the box and improvise, but that's okay also, as long as the actor themselves believe in what they're doing and the character and what they're saying, to be able to make the audience believe it, because they're the, last ones in the face of the film to convince the audience that it's real. So if they don't believe in it, you can't make them into robots. You can't force them to say things or do things and make it believable. So to me, at the end of the day, as long as the story is being told, I don't care what they say, as long as it also sounds natural and helps move the story forward.
And it's a good point. It's always a good sign for a director when you see their actor coming back, because I see that he is, as you mentioned before, is that Mickey Rourke is also helping you out, and he's going to be an actor in MR9 as well.
Yes, he's definitely in MR9, and then also we have another project in the future that we're talking about and planning to collaborate on as well.
I'm really curious that we're that with that with the coming forward, because we mentioned before we went on the air that you were a writer, producer, and director. And how would you compare the films that you wrote and directed as compared to some of the films that you only directed? How was that different for you?
For me, it's very important for me to connect with any film that I direct, and I also produce a lot, and there's been times where I've written for other directors. But in either case, it's important for me to connect with it, with the story, and believe in the project that I'm doing. And I always try to find inspiration in whatever the subject matter is, especially if I'm directing. I try to find a thread in there that motivates me and inspires me to tell that story. So even if it's someone else's script, I look at it as my own, because when I move forward in directing with it, I create a vision that also, allows me to get in there and write and create and re-edit the whole script my way, so that way, I can also represent my vision. So, it doesn't matter if it's an idea that I've conceived or a script I've written, or if it's someone else's. I can take that concept and make it my own and find the inspiration to, treat it as if it was my own creation, which it becomes, and a lot of the writers I work with, they're very collaborative as well. So we always work as a team to make it the best project possible, and that's what inspires me is to just tell the stories that I believe need to be told and that I can relate to, and I feel like others can relate to as well. So I don't look at it like, oh, that's my script that I wrote, or that's his script. I always look at it as like, okay, that's the story that I chose to tell right now. So I try to make it the best I can.
Do you feel as though you have to give a little bit away? Like, say, if you wrote a screenplay and the director didn't shoot it exactly how you saw it, do you feel as though, I mean, what platform do you feel as a screenplay writer to say, hey, this is what I was kind of thinking about? Or how does that relationship work in that sense, like that, when you have that?
In that note, you just, I feel like, and I understand where a lot of other writers come from when
Right.
it's their work that they create originally. But, I've been, lucky enough to be doing this long enough to also understand that it's not all about you, and it's not just your film. Even as a director, it's not all about you, or even when you're a star, lead actor, or whatever you are. At the end of the day, it's all full collaborative. The writer, sure, put it on the page, but at the end of the day, it's what's on screen that matters, and that only happens from that whole collaborative, effort by everyone in the pipeline. So, uh, as a writer, and understanding that, I have no problem of giving up, that exclusivity to the next person who's now responsible to direct it, and then the next person who's now responsible to shoot it and then edit it, and then you have the distributors who also make their final calls and decisions. You can't ever be married to one idea or one, vision, it's always going to change in someone else's hands down the line when you're doing it professionally. Now, if it's a movie you're making that you can claim as your own, you don't care what others say or think, and sure, you have an audience amongst your friends and family, and it can be on the shelf, sure. But when you're commercially making a film, professionally, it's something that we all have to accept and understand that it's never going to go exactly the way you want to or you say. You have to be open to, things changing and being in other people's hands. Even films that I write, direct, produce, at the end of the day, it's the distributor's choice. If they wanted to change the title, they can go change the title. And in fact, in different countries, sometimes the same movie can have multiple different titles because the distributor in that territory decided that would be better, or they changed the poster. Sometimes I've had movies where, they've made my poster to be completely different from what the movie really is. It has nothing to do with it, but they think it's more commercial. So okay, that's their field, that's their expertise. Let them, handle that. It's like that no matter where you go in the indie level or the studio level. There's always a chain of command and protocol that you have to just accept.
Yeah. Do you like it? Do you always try to like keep a collection of all your movie posters, like even the variant versions of the posters? You like to try to collect all those?
Yeah, no, I do. I try to, collect the ones that I personally like, and there are definitely some that I don't, want to even see again. So it's kind of funny. And, for me also, I try not to look in the past too much. I'm always, trying to move on and do the next, better project that inspires me to keep moving forward. A lot of times I look at my past projects just for fun. Maybe, I'll watch something from years ago and I'll be like, you know what, I forgot about that, but now it's pretty fun. I try to look at it from someone else's perspective, because it's so close to it, you forget what the experience of watching it as an audience would be like. So I kind of like to forget about my work, and then one day maybe I come across it, I watch it, and then I look at it differently, and that to me is fun.
Oh, so that was gonna be a good leading question for me. I was gonna ask you is like all of the movies that you wrote, produced, and directed. As I said, like Astro, the Commando. You have the other ones that are coming up with, Father Nation, Fighter, MR9. Do you, for your fans and your followers, do you ever like put in little Easter eggs, or is it like a shared universe in a way where do you foresee all your scripts being part of the same, like Asif, universe at all?
It's actually very interesting that you mentioned that because I actually do. I mean, sometimes in my mind they are, and even as I was growing up, that was one of the things that interested me the most is like, uh, thinking about all these actors that play different roles in different movies. And in my head, when I was like that 3-year-old kid, I would put them all in the same universe somehow, and I would, um, recreate these stories. So I do that even with my own films and ideas and stories. I think about, okay, what if this character from this movie was in that movie, and somehow we can intertwine it. And my wheels are always turning to see how I can incorporate them in my future work. But nothing officially yet. And I do have some scripts like that cross over because I've always loved, as a fan of different TV shows and movies, I've always loved when they did crossovers into universes and everything. And then when they started doing the Marvel universe, that was like my dream come true. I've always wanted that as a kid, to happen more and more. So in my own work, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I know better to not officially, connect certain stories and universes together for the audience's sake. But that is one of my dreams, is to be able to connect multiple projects of mine into one, and then ultimately do one film where all these characters come together and now they're in one film,
Right.
and that's something, like hopefully maybe will happen down the road 20 years from now.
Right. And I'm curious too, because looking at you have, well over a dozen, looking at your IMDb profile here. I mean, so I mean, as you know, you have, almost you're knocking on 24, movies that you've directed. You have well over it, and even from a writer perspective, over a dozen. You've produced almost 40. You have 40 credits on that. So I guess my question to you is that, do you feel as though, do you have a genre of film that you prefer, or are you deliberately trying to make sure that you increase your resume to make sure that you do multiple things?
To be honest with you, I love being able to do all different genres and have such a diverse resume, because I know how easy it can be to get locked in, and boxed into one particular genre as a filmmaker. And for me, from the beginning, I knew that I needed to be able to tell all kinds of stories and be um, accepted as a filmmaker that can do a versatile body of work. And in the beginning of my career, I did a big documentary called Top Priority, and I was getting access to all the studios in Hollywood, and we were a runner up to be nominated at the Academy Awards in 2012, and all the publications were writing about me um, becoming like the next Michael Moore. And I saw that, I'm like, no way, I don't want to, all respect to Michael Moore, and I have all respect for documentarians,
Wow.
but I didn't want to be boxed in as a documentary filmmaker. So
Right.
then right away I said, look, I don't want to make another documentary for maybe another 10 years. Let me, go and try making other films. And I was making other films, but at that time, that was one of the bigger projects I did that was getting a lot of, um, attention. And so people were already starting to box me in. And so I was able to get out of that, um, and be able to, create a vast majority of different projects that kind of took me out of it. So I'm glad that I didn't get boxed in, and I don't plan on. So once I make a few action films, then I'll go back to making maybe a drama, and then a horror, and then thriller, sci-fi. And I like pushing the boundaries of every genre I do. I try to do something I haven't done before, or I try to find motivation into doing something different with it, even if it's horror or sci-fi, then blending it into subgenres. Like Astro was sci-fi, action, and
Right.
thriller, and parts of it had drama. So even with Commando, it had different subgenres mixed into it, where it's not a full-on action film. It's a psychological thriller, action, and drama. um, so I always try to blend in my experiences from each genre into one to try to create something new.
Mm. So I'm kind of curious as well, as like we have a lot of writers that watch and listen to this podcast. What would be some advice for any writers who are interested in working on screenplays? What are some of your what's some of the advice that you would give them that you wish you knew about a dozen years ago when you started doing this?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to um, writers thinking, what they need to do to be able to sell their scripts or make it. And to be honest with you, it's one of those things where you just have to write what motivates you to just keep writing. I know it's one of the hardest things is to start
Mm,
a new idea on paper, but once you start it, you get past those first couple pages and you see that it has potential for life. Just keep writing, finish it, and once you get the first draft, I would say just move on from it. You have a script now in hand. Now, instead of wasting too much time and thinking too much into that one story and one script, move on to other ideas, even for a refresher. Now you have a property. Once you have your idea and story in script format on paper, now you have a property that can even be on the shelf and ready for a producer um, to find the right script that's fitting. Because a lot of times I've noticed writers, and even myself, I've done this in the past, in the beginning, where I dwell on one idea and one story and one script, and it goes on for months and years and nothing happens. But there's always a producer or someone looking for a different script that may not fit. It's all about the right timing with certain scripts. And if you have a stash of different scripts with different stories, then your chances of being able to sell that script is a lot higher. A lot of times, when you pitch your script, a producer might say, okay, well, you know what, your writing's good, but that's not the concept or type of script we're looking for now. What else do you have? So you have to be able to provide, other alternatives in its place. Otherwise, they're just going to go on to the next writer. You know, it's all about the timing of the product the producer needs, whether you approach them or they approach you. I get every week, we have inquiries of producers wanting certain types of scripts, action script, okay, but it has to be this certain way, or a horror script and it has to be this certain way. And then, if you have a script that's not that, but it could be, then you go back to, revising it, or bringing it to the table to see how you can make it work. But if you spend too much time on one script after the first draft, when it doesn't have any solid potential deals in place, then you're just spinning the wheel and going around in circles. But if you have someone who comes to you and says, I want that script, it's a done deal, but you need to revise it, then you can go back and go into draft 2, draft 3, draft 4, or if you have a particular actor you want to get on board to package that script, and that
Right.
actor has some notes to give you to revise it, then you can go and revise it, make a draft 2. But without having any solid movement, with that idea, it's not a good idea to just keep spending time and trying to perfect it when you don't really know what perfect is for that script. So I would just say utilize that time to move on and build more scripts in the lineup.
Right. So that's really good. So do you want to talk? So Commando is in post production right now. Um, where can people see this movie once it's released?
It's actually going to be releasing later this year, I was told,
Okay.
around maybe fall or later. But there is a studio in place for it. I'm just not allowed to share that yet, but it
Okay.
will be a studio release, and it'll be, I think if the theaters are still, opening up more and more, then there's potential of it also getting a theatrical release. So um,
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get more details, and they'll be making a trailer and everything coming up soon. So some of those things sometimes, with the bigger films, I'm more in the dark than some of the audience. Sometimes they tend to know when a trailer comes out even before me. And I
Oh,
find out
really?
from someone sending me a link. Yeah.
So, so what would you say? And as you say, you have some things listed on your thing. You have a lot of things in pre-production. How do you balance? As a filmmaker, how do you balance different projects at the same time? Do you have to go to get up to a certain point with one project before you can start another one? How does that work? How do you manage your time in that sense?
Um, yeah, it's actually getting more and more difficult as we go. There's times when I'm having to deal with 4 or 5 different productions and different stages in the same day, and trying to schedule that out, because I'm writing, I'm producing, I'm directing, then I'm in post. So I just have to, you know, kind of map out a time frame to spend on each project per day, you know, and a lot of times I get less sleep than I want to, and almost no sleep sometimes. And then, you know, sometimes I just have to be able to shut myself off. There are days where I'm like, you know what, I just, for my own sake, I need to refresh my head and just shut off for 5 hours from all of it. And then I
Right.
go and you know, come back and make a list and I say, okay, now I got to tackle this. I prioritize which one's, you know, the next in line to be delivered. You know, it's all about the delivery on each project. Sometimes, you know, they intertwine and they become, you know, on the same level of the priority list, and then that's when I start really losing sleep. You know, but the the best way is to just map out. Try not to, you know, do multiple projects or worry about multiple projects in the same hour. You know, I'll say, okay, the next 2 3 hours, I'll be thinking about this project, only talking to people that are associated with this project. Then I'll say, okay, in between, I'll take a half-hour break, and then I'll go into the next project with those sets of groups. And sometimes, you know, we have to intertwine them. You know, when they're the same group of people, and that gets to be depending on what kind of a project it is. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's hectic, but also it's just about going with the flow again, like having uh, that mindset and attitude of, you know, being ready to take on whatever comes your way. Because sometimes, you know, I'm dealing with one project and I get a phone call from another project saying, okay, this is an emergency, this is what happened, you know, we need to deal with this now. So then you have to be able to change gears. And a lot of it comes with experience. You mature more and more. The more projects you do, the more people you work with, you start creating a formula that becomes more second nature and natural, where, you know, now I don't panic if something goes wrong. You know, I just, you know, assess it on how to solve the problem the fastest and best way.
Right. Yeah, and it and also too, I mean, that's amazing. You're talking about it's just like being able to manage that time and just having some of those sleepless nights. And you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure having a, you know, being a new dad too with a 10-month-old that's kind of
Yeah, yeah. So you can
having a
hear her
having
you know, and she has
I,
her own schedule as well that you have
yeah.
to kind of, you know, work around and stuff. Yeah,
Right.
you know that you have a 6 month old.
Yeah. Yeah. You got it. So I mean, because at 10 months, she's it's crawling around. You have to put like all the outlet protectors on and all that kind of fun stuff too. And
Yeah, and she also has like her own little play yard gate, you know, like a big one in our living room, and so she's kind of like caged in her own area sometimes, and it's fun, but she's, yeah, walking around, like starting to hold and stand up and kind of walk, you
yeah,
know, but every day it's something new, you know, and that's like a full-time job. But I'm blessed
yeah,
with
man,
a wonderful wife that's, you know, helping
yeah,
full-time, just being the mom, and
man.
so
I
I'm
don't.
able
Yeah,
to, you know,
I'm
both things
impressed with
together.
Seek with your. Yeah, I'm impressed with your energy. I mean, being a, you know, having like a, you know, yeah, with a baby in the house, and then, you know, working on, you have 3 projects in pre-production now. At least that's listed on IMDb. That's not talking about all the other stuff that you're doing besides that, because of everything else that you're
Yeah, there's
working on,
some
your
I'm
other
working on that's not
projects.
even listed yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're knocking at the end of the hour, I see. So where can people find you if they want to kind of follow you? I know you have a pretty active Instagram account. Is there any other places people can look for you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. You know, I'm not too active on social media where I post a lot, but I'm accessible. You know,
Right.
people reach out to me every day through email or, you know, on my IMDb, you can find my contact. Um, you know, and I love to hear feedback from people on, you know, what they think, and at the same time, you know, what they learn from my experiences that I can share. I love, you know,
Right.
doing these kinds of shows with people like yourself, so I can share some of the do's and don'ts that I've gone through with a lot of, you know, aspiring filmmakers, and even the audience. I don't tend to hold back too much when I speak, because I know there's someone listening out there that can get something good out of it in their own journey, because it's such a difficult, life that we choose and profession to be in this business. It breaks people, and I've seen it down the road. A lot of my friends, along the way, even, people I've worked with for years, all of a sudden I see them break because one thing goes wrong or it doesn't go the way they plan. The thing is, you can't really plan things in this business. You have to be able to know how to handle, each problem as they come your way. And for me, the more I've listened to others share their stories and experiences with me and kind of, learn from their mistakes, that's saved me a lot from, making bigger mistakes. So I just want to, be able to share that as well as, my work that I love to share with the audience.
Right. Perfect. Right. Well, thank you. So thank you very much, Asif. This has been a true pleasure. And yeah, come back. Come back anytime. This has been great.
Oh, I'd love to, and hopefully next time my Safari will be updated, so we won't have the audio issues. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Perfect. All right. Thank you. Right. I had, and here, I was telling, I was on another podcast I do with some friends that talk about board games and board games and role playing games. And and I was telling them, so I don't know, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I have a theory that movie posters that were made pre-pandemic for movies that were supposed to come out, like movie theater, are probably going to be a huge collector's item in the next few years.
Oh yeah, no. I think overall, throughout, uh, the last few decades, I've noticed, because I used to be a movie poster collector myself. Back in high school, I used to actually work at a movie theater, and
Right.
I had the advantage of being able to, get a copy of each of the movies that we would play. And I've noticed a pattern, like with like each decade, there's like a theme type of a pattern of a lot of the posters being similar in design and concept. It's like every decade has their own thing, and now we're just
Right.
entering into 2021. It's going to start changing naturally, and everything else in the past will start becoming more and more of a collector's item.
Right, I got it. Yeah, and I got it because of the movies that never came out. Like we have like a whole row of movies that never actually came out in the theaters that are now.
Yeah, and they feel like classics already. Like I
Yeah,
remember, I'm like the other day I just saw a trailer for Black Widow. Marvel's Black Widow,
yeah.
and they're promoting it. Coming out soon. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that movie already came out like 2 years ago. But then I realized, oh no, it got delayed. It was one of those that got delayed for the
Right,
pandemic. So yeah, and it's creating a very interesting situation in our industry where there are a lot of big studio films that have been on hold, even like the new James Bond coming out, where if it was originally released last year, right now they would have been planning the next new James Bond, with the whole
right,
revival. But now, with that being pushed, there are other films that have been, filming during even the pandemic. I mean, people are creative. That's what we do. We
right,
figure out ways and solve problems to make things happen. And
right.
so there's a batch of all these older films, including a lot of big studio films and some indies that have been on like a waiting list. And then there's a batch of all these brand new films that are coming out, in production, or that has been in production through the pandemic, and now we're getting ready to
Getting
be
ready to
in
do
the
it.
release, line. So
Right,
it's interesting because now it's actually paving the way to have the indies and the studios kind of compete for the slots, the theater space, or even like the release dates. So
right.
it'll just be an overall, I think, new
New thing.
wave of business coming up.
All right, let me get ready. Let me throw in my intro real quick, and
Sure.
then we'll get down to the meat of the program. So,
Oh, I thought that was part of the program.
oh no, I got to do my intro first. I'll probably throw this
Yes.
in, and I'm excited because this is the first time I've actually had somebody who edits, so you can actually that you can critique my editing work, you know, when I do this in posts after. So
Oh, okay. Cool, awesome.
all right, here we go. All right,